She told herself the lie every morning in the mirror. This was just a job. But Claire Morgan knew better the moment she accepted the position as executive assistant to Vincent Torrino, the man federal prosecutors had been trying to nail for 2 decades. The man whose smile had charmed half of Brooklyn and whose reputation for making people disappear had terrified the other half. The office smelled like leather and old money, dark wood panels, brass fixtures polished to a mirror shine, and a massive mahogany desk that had probably cost more than her mother's entire cancer treatment. Claire stood in the doorway of the penthouse suite, overlooking the East River, her cheap Target blazer suddenly feeling like tissue paper, her forged resume burning a hole in her leather portfolio. Vincent sat behind that desk, a man in his mid-40s with salt and pepper hair swept back from a face that belonged in a Scorsese film. He didn't look up immediately. He was studying a silver pocket watch, turning it over in his hands like it held secrets. "Miss Morgan," his voice rolled out smooth as bourbon. "You're early." "I believe in punctuality, Mr. Torrino." Now he looked up. Dark eyes that seemed to read every lie she'd ever told. "So do I, especially when someone's wasting my time." He set the watch down with a decisive click. "Tell me why a woman with your credentials, Cornell, 3 years at a hedge fund, fluent in Italian, wants to work for a waste management company in Brooklyn." Her heart hammered against her ribs. This was the moment. The FBI agent who'd recruited her, Special Agent Sarah Chen, had drilled her for weeks. "Be confident. He respects strength. Don't oversell." Claire met his gaze without flinching. "Because waste management isn't what you really do, Mr. Torrino, and I'm tired of pretending the legal world is clean." Vincent's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those dark eyes. Interest or suspicion. With him, it was probably both. He hired her on the spot. 3 weeks in, Claire had learned to brew his espresso exactly right, 2 sugars, no milk, and to recognize the different weights of his silences. The heavy silence meant someone had screwed up and wouldn't be screwing up again. The thoughtful silence meant he was 3 moves ahead in whatever game he was playing. The dangerous silence, rare but unmistakable, meant violence was coming and she should find somewhere else to be. She'd also learned that Vincent Torrino kept 3 phones, one personal, one business, one that he answered in rapid Italian and never where she could hear clearly. That he touched the silver pocket watch in his left desk drawer before every important meeting. That he had a daughter named Isabella, 13 years old, whose school photos lined the credenza but who never called him during business hours. And that despite what the FBI files said, despite the whispered rumors and the bodies that allegedly fed the fish in Sheepshead Bay, Vincent treated his employees with a strange, old-world courtesy that made betraying him feel like stabbing a grandfather in the back. Which was a problem because betrayal was exactly what Claire was being paid to do. "Claire!" His voice cut through her thoughts. She looked up from her desk in the outer office to find him standing in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up. The first time she'd seen his forearms, scarred, tattooed with something that looked like a family crest, felt something she wasn't supposed to feel. "I need you to take a meeting for me." "Sir." "The Castellana warehouse, Pier 41. You'll be representing my interests in a negotiation." He pulled a small leather folder from his pocket and set it on her desk. "Everything you need to know is in there. Don't open it until you arrive." This was it. This was the opening Chen had promised would come. Access to an active operation, a warehouse the FBI had been trying to surveil for months. Claire kept her expression neutral. "When?" "8 tonight. Tommy will drive you." Vincent returned to his office but paused at the door. "Claire, these are not nice men. If anything feels wrong, you leave. Understood?" The concern in his voice shouldn't have touched her. It did. Pier 41 smelled like salt water and diesel fuel, and something darker underneath. Old blood, maybe, or just the weight of bad decisions. Tommy, Vincent's driver, was 6'4" of silent muscle who'd said maybe 10 words to her in 3 weeks. He didn't say anything now as he opened the car door at the warehouse entrance, just gave her a look that might have been warning or might have been apology. The warehouse was exactly what the FBI suspected, a front for smuggling operations, probably drugs or weapons or both. Crates stacked to the ceiling, dim industrial lighting. 3 men waiting by a folding table that looked like it had been stolen from a church basement. The tallest one smiled when he saw her, and it was the kind of smile that made Claire's skin crawl. Torrino sent a secretary. His accent was thick, Eastern European. He insults us. He sent a representative with authority to negotiate. Claire opened the leather folder Vincent had given her. Inside was a single page of typed notes and a black velvet jewelry box. Her hands steadied. "Shall we begin?" The negotiation was about shipping routes and percentage cuts, the kind of mundane criminal logistics that would sound boring in court, but represented millions in illegal revenue. Claire stuck to Vincent's script, gave nothing, gained 2 concessions. The Eastern European man's smile grew colder with each point she scored. Then his phone rang. He answered it in a rapid language Claire didn't recognize, and his expression changed. He looked at her differently now, looked at her like prey. "You are not Cornell graduate," he said softly. "You are federal agent, FBI." The warehouse seemed to tilt. Claire's training kicked in, deny, deflect, extract, but before she could speak, Tommy moved. He was suddenly between her and the 3 men, gun appearing in his hand like magic. "You're mistaken." "No mistake. We have source inside your investigation. FBI agent Sarah Chen running undercover insertion into Torrino organization. Cornell background is fabricated. This woman," he pointed at Claire, "is federal rat." The world narrowed to that gun in Tommy's hand and the terrible mathematics of how many bullets it held versus how many men filled this warehouse. But Tommy wasn't aiming at her. He was aiming at them. "Mr. Torrino expects his representative back within the hour," Tommy said calmly. "You can explain your intelligence failure to him directly, or we can leave now." They let them leave. Claire didn't breathe normally until they were back in the car, until Brooklyn was blurring past the windows, until Tommy spoke for maybe the 11th time since she'd met him. "He knows." "What?" "The boss. He knows what you are. Knew from the beginning." Tommy's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. "Question is, why'd he hire you anyway?" Claire made it back to the penthouse office, made it through Vincent's door, made it exactly 3 steps before her legs gave out. She caught herself on the edge of his desk, the silver pocket watch cold under her palm. Vincent stood by the window, silhouetted against the city lights, and when he turned around, his expression was unreadable. "Sit down before you fall down." She sat. Her hands were shaking. "You knew." "Of course I knew." He poured 2 glasses of scotch from a crystal decanter, pressed one into her hands. "Sarah Chen is a terrible poker player. And you," he studied her like she was a painting he was considering buying. "You're a much better person than you are a liar." "Then why?" "Because I'm curious, Miss Morgan. Or should I say Agent Morgan?" "No." He held up a hand. "Don't answer. I actually don't care. Here's what I care about. You have a mother dying of stage 4 pancreatic cancer at Mount Sinai. Medical bills approaching $500,000. The FBI promised to cover them in exchange for your cooperation. Am I close?" Claire's throat closed. She managed a nod. "Here's my offer. Continue working for me. Really working, no more pretending, no more reporting to Chen. In exchange, I'll pay your mother's medical bills in full, plus ensure she receives the best care money can buy. Experimental treatments, private nurses, whatever extends her life." He sat on the edge of his desk, close enough that she could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. "All I ask is your loyalty, real loyalty. You want me to betray the FBI. I want you to choose between a bureaucracy that's using your desperation and a man who's offering you exactly what you need." He picked up the silver pocket watch, opened it to reveal a faded photograph inside, a young woman with kind eyes. "This was my wife. She died of cancer when Isabella was 3. I would have burned the world down to save her. So I understand what you're facing, Claire. I understand the weight." She should say no. She should run straight to Chen, should let them wire her up and use this confession to finally nail Vincent Torrino. But her mother's voice echoed in her memory, the way it had started to weaken in the past month, the way she'd stopped talking about next year as if she knew there wouldn't be one. "I need time. You have until morning." Vincent stood, moved back to the window. "One more thing, the men at the warehouse tonight, they're not wrong about having a source in the FBI, but it's not Chen, it's her supervisor. which means by tomorrow, Chen will know her operation is compromised, and she'll burn you to protect herself. So really, you don't have until morning. You have until she makes that call. Claire went home to her studio apartment in Queens, sat on her thrift store couch, and stared at her phone for 3 hours. She didn't call Chen. She didn't call her mother. She didn't call anyone, because what do you say when your entire identity is collapsing, and the only life raft being offered comes with blood on it? Her phone rang at 2:47 a.m. Chen's number. "Don't answer," she whispered to herself, but her hand was already moving, already accepting the call. "You need to come in." Chen's voice was tight, professional, stripped of the warmth she'd used during recruitment. "Now. We've been compromised." "I know," a pause. "Torrino told you. Among other things. Listen to me very carefully, Claire. Whatever he offered you, whatever he said, it's a trap. He's playing you. These men are experts at manipulation. He offered to save my mother's life." Silence on the other end. Then, "We can protect you. Witness protection, relocation, everything. But you can't save her." "Can you?" Claire was surprised by how steady her voice sounded. "Can't make stage 4 pancreatic cancer disappear. Can't pay for treatments the insurance won't cover. Can't buy time." "Claire," she hung up, turned off her phone, sat in the dark and waited for morning. And when the sun finally dragged itself over the East River, she knew what choice she'd made. Maybe she'd known all along. Vincent was already at the office when she arrived at 6 a.m. He looked like he hadn't slept either. The silver watch sat open on his desk, his wife's photograph catching the early light. "I'm in," Claire said, "but I have conditions." He smiled, and for the first time it reached his eyes. "I'm listening." Her first real assignment came 3 days later, after Chen had tried calling 47 times and finally given up, after her mother's hospital bills mysteriously zeroed out and a new doctor appeared, a specialist from Johns Hopkins who used words like promising and remission. After Claire stopped pretending she was anything but what she'd become. "There's a ledger," Vincent told her, spreading surveillance photos across his desk. "Red leather, about the size of a hardcover book. It contains financial records that, in the wrong hands, would destroy several prominent families in this city, including mine." He tapped one photo, a townhouse in Park Slope. "Marco Benedetti has it. He's threatening to sell it to the feds unless I pay him $20 million. That's extortion. That's business." Vincent's expression hardened. "Marco was my brother-in-law, Isabella's uncle. I trusted him with family secrets, and now he's using them as leverage. I need that ledger back. I need you to get it." "Me, I'm not a thief." "No, you're something better. You're invisible." He pulled out another photograph, this one of a pretty brunette in her 30s. "Marco is hosting a charity gala tomorrow night, cancer research. You'll attend as my representative, carrying a donation check. Marco collects rare books. They're displayed in his study on the 2nd floor. The ledger will be hidden among them." Claire studied the townhouse layout, the security details, the guest list. It was insane. It was impossible. It was exactly the kind of thing she would have reported to the FBI 6 days ago. Why not just take it by force? Vincent's jaw tightened. "Because Marco is Isabella's uncle. Because my wife loved him. Because some lines once crossed can't be uncrossed." He met her eyes. "I'm trusting you with this, Claire. Don't make me regret it." The gala was everything Claire had expected. Too much champagne, too many diamonds, too many people pretending they cared about cancer research when really they just wanted to see and be seen. She wore a black dress Vincent had sent to her apartment, the kind of dress that cost more than 3 months of her old FBI salary, and carried a check for $50,000 like it was nothing. Marco Benedetti greeted her personally, a handsome man in his 50s with her mother's smile and a viper's eyes. "Claire Morgan, Vincent speaks highly of you. Mr. Torrino is generous with his praise. And his money, apparently." Marco glanced at the check. 50,000. "Tell me, Miss Morgan, has Vincent explained what his money actually buys? The bodies it's purchased, the lives destroyed." She kept her expression neutral. "I'm here to support cancer research, Mr. Benedetti, not to discuss my employer's business practices." He laughed, but it was ugly. "Of course, forgive me. Please enjoy the party. The bar is open, the food is excellent, and if you need anything, anything at all, My staff will assist you." Claire waited an hour, nursing a single glass of wine, making small talk with strangers who all seemed to know she was Vincent's representative. Finally, she excused herself to use the restroom, climbed the stairs to the second floor, and found the study. It was exactly as the photographs showed: floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive oak desk, leather chairs, and the smell of old paper and older money. Claire pulled on the thin gloves she'd hidden in her clutch and started searching. The ledger would be hidden, Vincent had said, probably behind other books or in a false spine, or there. A section of art books on the third shelf that didn't quite align with the others. She pulled them out carefully and found it. Red leather, gilt-edged pages, her betrayal made physical. "I knew he'd send someone," Claire spun. Marco stood in the doorway, blocking her exit, and he wasn't smiling anymore. "I knew Vincent wouldn't pay, too proud, too stubborn, so he sent his pretty new secretary to steal what he owes me. I don't know what you're talking about. Please. I have cameras." He pulled out his phone, showed her a video of herself searching the shelves. "But here's what's interesting. You're not just any secretary. You were FBI. Agent Sarah Chen's undercover insertion. Vincent hired you knowing exactly what you were, and now here you are stealing for him, betraying your oath, your country." He stepped closer. "Tell me, how much did he pay for your soul?" Claire's mind raced through options, through training she'd supposedly abandoned, through the cold calculus of what happened next. She could run, there was a window behind the desk. She could fight, Marco was bigger but she'd had defensive training. Or she could do what Vincent would do, negotiate. "The ledger for my silence," she said. "I walk out of here with this, you keep the video to yourself. Nobody needs to know the FBI had an agent inside the Torrino organization." Marco considered this, head tilted. "You know what? I have a better idea." He pulled a gun from his jacket, small and silver, and pointed directly at her chest. "You're going to call Vincent, tell him you have the ledger, and when he comes to pick you up, my men will be waiting. Vincent Torrino, the man who's untouchable, walking into an ambush to save his secretary. The FBI will love it, and I'll sell them the ledger and the video for twice what Vincent wouldn't pay." This was bad. This was worse than bad. Claire's hand tightened on the ledger as her mind scrambled for an exit. For anything, glass shattered. The window behind Marco exploded inward, and Tommy came through it like a wrecking ball. He hit Marco from behind, the gun went flying, and suddenly the room was chaos. Marco fought back. He was trained, Claire realized, really trained, and for a moment it looked like he might actually win. Then Tommy got a hand on Marco's throat and slammed him into the bookshelf hard enough to crack wood. "Go," Tommy grunted. "I got this." Claire ran. Down the stairs, through the party where nobody had heard anything over the string quartet, out the front door and into the night where a car was waiting. Not the usual town car, but a nondescript sedan with Vincent in the driver's seat. "Get in," she got in. He drove. Neither spoke for 10 blocks, 15, 20. Finally, somewhere in Sunset Park, Vincent pulled over and turned to look at her. "Did you get it?" She handed him the ledger. He opened it, flipped through pages of financial records that represented decades of careful crime, then closed it and set it in the back seat like it was nothing. "Tommy," Claire asked, "we'll handle Marco," non-lethally. "Probably." Vincent's hands were tight on the steering wheel. "I should have known Marco would try something. Should have anticipated the cameras, the ambush. I put you in danger." "I signed up for this." "No, you signed up to save your mother." "There's a difference." He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something passed between them that Claire couldn't name. Something dangerous. "Thank you for getting the ledger, for not running when you had the chance." "Where would I run to?" "The FBI wants me in prison for betrayal. Marco wants me dead for stealing. You're the only ally I have left." She laughed, and it came out bitter. "Congratulations. You've successfully isolated me. That wasn't my intention. Wasn't it?" Vincent started the car again but didn't drive. Just sat there with the engine running, the city lights painting shadows across his face. "My wife, Maria. The woman in the photograph. She was the only person who ever saw past what I am. Saw past the business, the reputation, the violence. She made me want to be better." His voice dropped. "When she died, I thought that part of me died too. That I'd never again want to be anything but what this life made me. And then you showed up in my office with your terrible lies and your good heart, and I thought—" He stopped himself. It doesn't matter what I thought. But Claire's heart was hammering again, for entirely different reasons now. "Vincent!" A gunshot cracked through the night. The rear window exploded. Vincent threw himself across her as more bullets punched through metal, as the world became noise and breaking glass and the smell of gunpowder. He was heavy on top of her, protective, and she could feel his heart racing against her shoulder blade. "Stay down," he growled, and suddenly there was a gun in his hand. Where had he been hiding it? And he was returning fire out the driver's window. 3 shots, precise and controlled, and the shooting stopped. In the ringing silence that followed, Vincent slowly sat up. Blood ran down his arm from a graze wound. "You okay?" "I'm fine, you're shot." "It's nothing." He checked the mirrors, the street, the shadows. Marco's men, he must have had backup. "We need to move." He drove them to a place Claire didn't recognize, a warehouse in Red Hook, different from Pier 41 but equally isolated. Inside was a small apartment, clearly maintained for emergencies. Bed, bathroom, kitchenette, weapons locker. Vincent locked the door behind them with 3 separate deadbolts and finally let himself wince. "Let me see your arm," Claire said. "I told you it's nothing." "Let me see it." He did. The bullet had carved a shallow groove through his bicep, painful but not serious. Claire found a first aid kit, cleaned the wound with steady hands despite her racing pulse. They were alone, really alone. The walls here probably concealed sins she couldn't imagine, and she was playing field medic to a mob boss while his blood stained her $5,000 dress. "This is insane," she whispered. "All of this. A month ago I was serving coffee in an FBI office, and now what am I? Alive." Vincent caught her wrist gently as she finished bandaging. "You're alive, Claire. In this life, on this night, that's enough." They stayed in the warehouse for 3 days while Vincent's organization dealt with Marco's men, while the police investigated a gang shooting in Sunset Park, while the FBI quietly closed the file on an undercover operation that had gone catastrophically wrong. Claire learned to sleep with a gun under her pillow, learned to read the difference between Vincent's business calls and his personal ones, learned that, when he thought she was asleep, he sat by the window and stared at nothing like a man haunted by every choice he'd ever made. On the 3rd night, she woke to find him at the small table, the red ledger open in front of him. He was drinking whiskey straight from the bottle. "Can't sleep?" she asked. "Never could, not since Maria." He gestured at the ledger. "You know what's in here? Every illegal dollar I've ever moved. Every payment to every corrupt cop, judge, politician. 20 years of careful documentation, because I'm old-fashioned enough to believe in records. And Marco was going to give it all to the feds, destroy my family, destroy Isabella's future." Claire sat across from him. "So burn it." "What? Burn it. If it's that dangerous, burn it. Start over." She was surprised by her own words, by how much she meant them. "You could, walk away, take Isabella somewhere safe, leave all this behind." Vincent laughed, but it was sad. "You think it's that simple. You think I can just decide to stop being what I am? I did. I was FBI. Now I'm—" She gestured at herself, at the warehouse, at the impossibility of the past month. "Whatever this is, you're still good, Claire. Still trying to save people, your mother, yourself. Still basically decent despite everything I've pulled you into." He reached across the table, his hand covering hers. "I'm not good, haven't been for a very long time. And if you're smart, you'll run while you still can. Is that what you want? Number God help me, no." His grip tightened. "But it's what you should do." She didn't run. She stayed. And when Vincent finally stood to go back to his window vigil, Claire followed him, stood close enough to feel his warmth, close enough to see the gray threading through his dark hair. She reached up, tentative, and touched his face, the rough stubble, the scar under his left eye that she'd never asked about. "Claire." Her name was a warning or a prayer. "Don't. Don't what? Don't make me more of a monster than I already am." She kissed him anyway. Kissed him like salvation, like damnation, like the terrible inevitability of falling. He resisted for maybe 3 seconds before kissing her back, fierce and desperate, hands in her hair, pulling her closer. They broke apart, breathing hard, foreheads pressed together, the weight of crossed lines heavy between them. This is a mistake, Vincent said. Probably. I'm twice your age, I've killed people. I'm going to hell, Claire, and I'm taking you with me. Then we'll go together. They didn't sleep that night. They talked instead about his wife, about her mother, about the choices that had led them both to this warehouse at the edge of the city, about Isabella and what kind of life Vincent wanted for her, about the FBI agent Claire had been and the person she was becoming. And when morning finally came, filtering through the grimy windows, something between them had shifted irrevocably. Tommy came to get them at noon. "Boss, we got a problem." Vincent was instantly alert. "What kind?" "The hospital kind. Isabella's been admitted, some kind of accident at school." They broke every speed limit getting to Mount Sinai. Claire's mother was still a patient here, somewhere in the oncology wing. But they blew past that floor to pediatrics where a 13-year-old girl with Vincent's eyes and her mother's smile lay in a hospital bed, arm in a cast, face bruised. "Papa," her voice was small. Vincent was at her bedside in 2 strides, all the hardness gone from him. "Bella, baby, what happened?" "It was nothing, just stupid girls being mean. I fell down the stairs trying to get away from them." She glanced at Claire. "Who's she?" "This is Claire, she works with me." Vincent smoothed his daughter's hair back from her forehead. "The doctors said you'll be fine, no permanent damage." But I want to know who did this," Claire interrupted, surprising herself. Both Torrinos looked at her. "Which girls?" "What did they say?" Isabella's expression shuddered. "It doesn't matter. It matters to me." Something passed across the girl's face, evaluation, suspicion, then tentative hope. "They said my father was a criminal, that he killed people, that I was going to grow up and be trash just like him." Her voice cracked. "They're not wrong, are they?" Vincent looked like he'd been shot again. Claire saw him scrambling for words, for some way to explain his life to his daughter that didn't destroy her. She stepped in. "Your father runs a business. Sometimes that business requires hard choices. Sometimes those choices mean people get hurt." Claire moved closer to the bed. "But I've seen him protect his employees. I've seen him keep his word even when it cost him. I've seen him care more about your safety than his own life. So whatever those girls said, whatever rumors they've heard, they don't know him. Not like you do. Not like I'm starting to." Isabella studied her for a long moment. "You love him." It wasn't a question. Claire felt Vincent tense beside her, felt the weight of the truth settling. "Yeah, I think maybe I do." "Good." Isabella smiled, small and fragile. "He needs somebody. He's been alone too long." They stayed with her until visiting hours ended, until the nurses insisted Isabella needed rest. Walking out through the hospital lobby, passing the oncology wing where Claire's mother slept, she felt the full surreal weight of her new life. FBI agent to Mob Mall to whatever she was becoming. Someone who loved a dangerous man and his daughter. Someone who'd crossed so many lines she couldn't see them anymore. "Thank you," Vincent said quietly in the elevator down. "For what you said to Isabella, you didn't have to." "Yes, I did, because it was true." Claire looked at him. "All of it." The elevator doors opened. Chen was waiting in the lobby. For a moment, nobody moved. The FBI agent looked older than Claire remembered, tired in a way that went bone deep. She wasn't in official capacity, no backup, no badge visible, just a woman standing alone in a public place. "Can we talk?" Chen asked. "Just 5 minutes." Vincent's hand moved toward his jacket, toward a gun Claire realized. She caught his wrist. 5 minutes in public. What harm can it do? They found a corner of the hospital cafeteria that was mostly empty, late-night shift workers too exhausted to care about the tension at the table by the window. Chen sat across from them, hands wrapped around a coffee cup she wasn't drinking. "I'm not here officially," she said. "I'm here because I recruited you, Claire, because I told you we'd take care of your mother and we didn't. Because I need you to know that what happened, the leak, the compromised operation, all of it wasn't your fault. I know, Vincent told me about your supervisor." Chen's expression flickered. "He's been dealt with, quietly. But that doesn't change the situation. You're burned, Claire, your career is over. And you," she looked at Vincent, "you're using her the way you use everyone. That's where you're wrong." Vincent's voice was flat. "I don't use people I care about. You care about her." Chen said it like an accusation. A month ago you didn't know she existed, and now you care about her. Forgive me if I don't believe the mob boss has a heart. Believe what you want. Claire's made her choice. She's chosen life over the bureau that abandoned her. Vincent stood. And unless you have an arrest warrant, we're done here. But Chen's eyes were on Claire. Is that true? You choose this, choose him. Claire thought about her mother upstairs, cancer-free because of Vincent's money. About Isabella in pediatrics, trusting her with family secrets. About the man beside her who'd taken bullets for her and kissed her like she was something precious. About the FBI that had used her desperation and then thrown her away. Yeah, she said quietly, I choose this. Chen nodded slowly. Then I hope you survive it. Really, I do. She stood, left money for her untouched coffee, and walked away without looking back. The next 3 months were the strangest of Claire's life. She moved from her studio in Queens to Vincent's penthouse, officially as his assistant, but really as something more complicated. She learned the rhythms of his world. The morning meetings with men who avoided eye contact, the afternoon calls to legitimate businesses that kept everything plausibly legal, the evening dinners with Isabella where they pretended they were just a normal family. She watched Vincent navigate his empire with the same careful precision he applied to everything. Watched him balance violence and restraint, watched him protect his people and destroy his enemies, watched him love his daughter with a fierceness that made Claire's heart ache. And she learned to spot undercover cops, learned which lawyers could be trusted and which were FBI informants, learned to read ledgers and balance books and hide money in ways that looked legitimate on paper. She became exactly what the FBI had feared, an insider with law enforcement training, helping a mob boss stay ahead of investigation. But she also saw the cost. Saw Vincent wake from nightmares about his dead wife. Saw him make decisions that kept him up at night. Saw the way violence hung over him like a storm that never quite broke, how he carried the weight of every life he'd taken or ordered taken. You could stop, she told him one night, tangled in expensive sheets, the city lights painting patterns across the ceiling. All of this, you've made enough money to disappear. Take Isabella and go. Where would I go? What would I be? His arm tightened around her. This is all I know, Claire. This is all I've ever been good at. You're good at other things, at being a father, she hesitated, at being with me. He kissed her temple. Being with you is the best thing I've done in years. Doesn't mean I know how to stop being what I am. 3 days later, the FBI raided one of Vincent's warehouses. 12 agents, battering rams, search warrants. They found nothing. Vincent had been tipped off an hour earlier by a source Claire didn't ask about. But the message was clear. The investigation was escalating. They're going to keep pushing, Claire said, studying the news coverage. Chen's supervisor might be gone, but there are others. They want you, Vincent. They've always wanted you. So what do you suggest? She looked at the red ledger, still sitting in Vincent's safe. The documentation of 20 years of crime. The evidence that could destroy him. Give it to them, but on your terms. Vincent stared at her like she'd suggested he set himself on fire. You want me to incriminate myself? No, I want you to make a deal. Selective immunity in exchange for information on bigger fish. Other families. Corruption at higher levels. You'd have to give up some territory, probably take some heat from the other bosses. But Isabella would grow up with a father who's not looking over his shoulder. You'd be free. I'd be a rat. You'd be alive. Claire moved closer. And you'd be with me, legitimately. No more hiding, no more violence, no more nightmares about Maria. Isn't that worth something? For a long moment, Vincent said nothing. Then, you know what happens to rats in this world, Claire, even rats who make deals. Someone always comes for them eventually. Then we'll deal with that when it comes, together. She took his hand. Please, Vincent, do this, not for me, for Isabella. Give her a chance at a normal life. He pulled away, walked to the window, stood in his favorite position for thinking, silhouetted against the city he'd ruled for 20 years. I need to think about it. But the choice was taken out of his hands 2 weeks later. Claire was at the hospital visiting her mother, who was doing remarkably well, the experimental treatments working beyond anyone's expectations, when her phone exploded with messages. Tommy first, boss in trouble. Hospital. Now, she ran. sprinted through corridors she'd come to know too well, following signs to the ER. Found Tommy in the waiting room, blood on his shirt, looking like someone had beaten hope out of him with a hammer. What happened? Ambush. They were waiting outside Isabella's school. Professional hit, 3 cars, 8 men. We fought back, but his voice broke. The boss took 2 bullets. Isabella's okay, scared but okay. But Vincent, a doctor appeared, scrubs splattered red. Family of Vincent Torrino. Claire's mouth was too dry to speak. Tommy stood. How is he? Critical but stable. The bullets missed major organs, but he's lost a lot of blood. We're going to keep him sedated for the next 24 hours. Are you family? I am, Claire lied without hesitation. I'm his. What was she? Girlfriend sounded absurd. Partner sounded criminal. I'm his fiancé. The doctor nodded. You can see him. 10 minutes. Vincent looked wrong in the hospital bed. Smaller somehow. The machines around him beeped steadily, tracking a heartbeat that Claire had felt against her own chest just hours ago. She took his hand, careful of the IV lines. You stubborn bastard, she whispered. You can't die. You don't get to die and leave me here to figure this out alone. You promised me. Her voice broke. You promised we'd figure it out together. His fingers twitched in hers. Maybe he heard. Maybe it was just reflex. Either way, she held on. Isabella arrived 20 minutes later, escorted by 2 of Vincent's men who looked like they'd failed some sacred duty. The girl's eyes were red from crying but dry now, locked into something harder. She looked at her father in the hospital bed, looked at Claire and said, Who did this? We don't know yet. When we find out, what happens? Claire saw the crossroads in Isabella's question. Saw the girl standing where Claire herself had stood months ago, choosing between the law and something darker. Between the person she'd been raised to be and the person this life demanded. And Claire realized she had the power to push Isabella one way or the other with her answer. When we find out, Claire said carefully, we make sure they face justice. Real justice, not revenge, justice. The kind that protects you and keeps you safe without turning you into them. Isabella studied her. My father would want revenge. Your father wants you to be better than he is. He's told me that. Many times. Did he tell you he loves you? The question caught Claire off guard. Not in so many words, but yeah, I think he does. Good. Isabella moved to the other side of the bed, took her father's other hand. Because when he wakes up, you're going to convince him to stop, to really stop. Because if he doesn't, next time they won't miss. She looked at Claire across Vincent's unconscious body. I can't lose him, not like I lost Mama. I can't. You won't, I promise. It was a promise Claire had no idea how to keep. The investigation into the ambush moved fast. Within 48 hours, Tommy's men had identified the shooters, hired guns from out of state, paid by a shell company that traced back to the Castellano family. The same family whose warehouse negotiation had gone sideways months ago. Revenge, then, or a power play, or both. Vincent woke on the 3rd day. Groggy, in pain, but lucid enough to demand his phone and start issuing orders. Claire stopped him. No, Claire, I need to. No. She took the phone from his hand. You need to rest, and then you need to listen to me. She told him about Isabella's fear, about the choice he faced, about the deal she thought they could still make. Immunity, protection, freedom. It would mean testifying against the Castellanos. Would mean cooperating with the same FBI that had tried to nail him for years. Would mean becoming exactly what he'd always despised. They'll kill me, Vincent said flatly. The moment I agree to testify, I'm a dead man. Not if we do it right. Full witness protection for you and Isabella. New identities, new city, new life. Claire sat on the edge of his hospital bed. I've been talking to Chen, unofficially. She says her superiors would take the deal. You're worth more as a witness than as a defendant. A witness who rats out the entire eastern seaboard. Vincent closed his eyes. My father would have killed me himself for even considering it. Your father's dead, and you're about to be unless you take this deal. She leaned closer. Please, Vincent, do it for Isabella, do it for me. Hell, do it for yourself. Don't you want to stop carrying this weight? And what about you? Witness protection won't cover my girlfriend who's also a former FBI agent. They'd leave you out in the cold. Claire had thought about this. Had spent 3 sleepless nights working through the logistics. I'll take my chances. change my name, move somewhere far away. Maybe, she hesitated, maybe Montana. My mother always wanted to see Montana. That's not good enough. I'm not losing you. You won't lose me. We'll find each other after, when it's safe, when Isabella's settled and the trials are over and… No. Vincent's hand found hers with surprising strength for a man who'd been shot twice. No, if I'm doing this, you're coming with us, all of us, together. I'll make it a condition of the deal. Vincent, together, Claire, or not at all. Agent Chen arranged the meeting for the following week in a secure conference room at Federal Plaza. Vincent attended in a wheelchair, still healing, with Tommy and 2 lawyers flanking him. Claire sat beside him, her hand on his shoulder, as they faced a panel of federal prosecutors who looked like they couldn't believe their luck. The deal took 6 hours to hammer out. Vincent would provide testimony and documentation on 5 major crime families operating in the New York area, would identify corrupt officials and detail money laundering operations. In exchange, immunity from prosecution, witness protection for himself, his daughter, and, after significant argument, Claire. The Red Ledger would become government property. One more thing, Vincent said as they prepared to sign. The Castellanos, the men who ordered the hit, I want them specifically targeted. We already have them on our list, one prosecutor said. No, I mean immediately, before I'm officially in protection. Because the moment this deal goes public, they'll run. And I need to know they're not out there planning another hit on my daughter. The prosecutors exchanged glances. This was gray area, using Vincent's information to launch raids while he was technically still a free man. But the evidence he was offering was too good to pass up. We'll prioritize them, the lead prosecutor agreed. Raids within 72 hours. Vincent signed. Claire watched his hand move across the page, watched him sign away 20 years of power and identity, watched him choose life over legacy. Then she signed her own affidavit, agreeing to testify about her time undercover and her knowledge of Vincent's organization. Both of them traitors to the lives they'd known. Both of them trying to build something new from the wreckage. The raids came fast. The FBI hit 6 Castellano properties simultaneously, arrested 14 men including the family patriarch. The news coverage was massive, biggest mob bust in a decade, they said. Vincent Torrino's name came up as a cooperating witness, which meant the clock was ticking on how long they could stay in New York. Witness protection moved them within a week. Not Montana, too obvious, the marshals said. Instead, a small town in Oregon, chosen specifically because it was nothing like Brooklyn. Rain instead of snow, mountains instead of skyscrapers, a whole life that felt like wearing someone else's clothes. Vincent became Michael Warren, a consultant for waste management companies. Claire became his wife, Sarah Warren, a freelance accountant. Isabella became Emma Warren, enrolled in a middle school where nobody knew or cared who her father had been. They lived in a 3-bedroom house with a yard and a mortgage and neighbors who waved. It should have felt like freedom. Sometimes it did, waking up next to Vincent without the shadow of violence, watching Isabella laugh with new friends who didn't whisper about her family, having dinner without checking the windows for surveillance. But other times, Claire saw Vincent stare at nothing and knew he was thinking about the life he'd left behind. The power, the respect, the identity that had defined him since he was younger than Isabella. Do you regret it? She asked him one night, 6 months into their new life. They were on the back porch, watching Oregon rain turn the yard into a watercolor. Honestly, some days, yeah. I regret becoming the kind of man my father would have spat on. I regret that somewhere in Brooklyn, people are calling me a rat and meaning it. He pulled her closer. But then Isabella comes home talking about her art class, or your mother calls to say she's cancer-free for another year, or I wake up next to you and remember I'm not looking over my shoulder anymore. He kissed her temple. So no, I don't regret it, not really. Michael Warren, Claire tested the name, it doesn't suit you. Good. Because I'm not trying to be him. I'm trying to figure out who I am when I'm not Vincent Torrino. It took another year for the trials to conclude. Vincent testified in 3 separate cases, his testimony precise and devastating. The Castellanos got life sentences. 2 city councilmen and a police captain went to prison for corruption. The criminal networks Vincent had helped build and then helped destroy wouldn't recover for a generation. And through it all, Claire sat in the gallery watching the man she loved methodically dismantle his own legacy. Watched him choose truth over loyalty, law over the code he'd lived by. Watched him become something new, not clean, never clean, but maybe cleaner. Maybe redeemed. When it was finally over, when the last verdict was read and they were released from the obligation to testify, the three of them, Vincent, Claire, and Isabella, stood in the rain outside the courthouse and breathed. "It's done," Vincent said. "It's done," Claire agreed. Isabella looked at them both. "So now what?" "Now," Vincent smiled. It reached his eyes. "Now we go home and we figure out how to be normal." They never quite managed normal. Vincent was too shaped by his past, Claire too marked by her betrayal, Isabella too aware of the secrets they carried. But they managed something else, something like peace. Vincent started a legitimate consulting business, actually helping waste management companies with logistics. Claire finished her accounting degree online and started doing taxes for local businesses. Isabella got into art school, her paintings dark and beautiful and haunted in ways her teachers called profound. Claire's mother visited often, healthy and vibrant and marveling at the second chance she'd been given. She never asked too many questions about how her bills had been paid or why her daughter was living under a different name. Some graces are best accepted without examination. 5 years after the deal, on a rainy Tuesday that could have been any Tuesday, Vincent proposed properly. Not the fake engagement they'd used in the hospital, but a real one, with a ring and nervous stumbling over words, and Isabella grinning in the background. Claire said yes before he'd finished asking. They married in a small ceremony with fake names and real vows. Chen attended, retired now from the FBI, working private security, but she came because she'd been there at the beginning and wanted to see the end. Or the new beginning, or whatever this was. "You did it," Chen said at the reception, rain pattering on the tent they'd set up in the backyard. "Actually did it, reformed a mob boss." "I didn't reform anyone," Claire said. "He reformed himself. I just gave him a reason to try." "Same thing." Chen sipped her champagne. "For what it's worth, I'm glad I recruited you, even though it went sideways, even though you betrayed everything we stand for. Because this," she gestured at Vincent dancing with Isabella, both of them laughing. "This is better than any conviction I ever got." Claire thought about the woman she'd been desperate, frightened, willing to betray anyone to save her mother. Thought about the woman she'd become, still complicated, still carrying scars, but maybe finally at peace with her choices. Thought about the secret she'd stolen and the love she'd found and the strange, impossible redemption of it all. "Yeah," she said quietly, "it is." The night wore on. The rain never stopped. This was Oregon, after all, but nobody seemed to mind. Vincent found Claire in the kitchen later, stealing a moment of quiet, and pulled her close. "Mrs. Warren," he said, testing the name. "Mr. Warren," she replied, and they both smiled at the absurdity of it. "I never told you why I kept the pocket watch," he said. "Why I looked at Maria's picture before every meeting. Why? Because I needed to remember what I was protecting, what all the violence was supposedly for keeping my family safe. But somewhere along the way, I forgot that protection doesn't have to mean destruction." He pulled the watch from his pocket. It was battered now, the silver tarnished, but he opened it to show her something new, a second photograph tucked beside Maria's. Claire's face, caught in a moment of laughter she didn't remember. "Now I remember differently. Remember that keeping people safe sometimes means walking away from the fight." Claire took the watch, studied both photographs. "You keep us both? Always. Maria made me want to be better. You made me believe I could." He closed her fingers around the watch. "Keep it, so you remember too." "Remember what?" "That even people like me can change. That love is stronger than loyalty to dead codes. That choosing life over legacy isn't betrayal, it's survival." He kissed her, soft and certain. "That you gave me more than I ever gave you. You gave me this, all of this." Later, much later, after the guests had gone and Isabella was asleep, and the rain had gentled to mist, Claire and Vincent stood in their yard and looked at the life they'd built from ashes and lies and impossible choices. It wasn't the life either of them had planned, but it was real, it was safe, it was theirs. No regrets? Claire asked one final time. Vincent looked at the house where his daughter slept soundly, at the woman beside him who'd saved him by letting him save himself, at the future stretching out uncertain but unafraid. Not one, he said, and for the first time in 20 years, he meant it.